Hey Weather Warriors, I am back after a 2-year hiatus, and we have got a lot to talk about. A big time severe weather threat for Tuesday and Wednesday. This is last week's severe weather threat. This is this week's, almost identical. And we got one Wednesday as well. And we're also going to talk about a big blizzard that's going to go across the United States here. So let's crack right into it. And as always, these shows go perfect with a nice cup of coffee, tea, whatever you want. So we're going to first look at windy TV. We're going to look at the weather pattern. This is right now, this is the jet stream, and you can see big time jet stream, hyperactive airflow coming right onto the coast. And you can see that divergence spreading out into the plains in Midwest. And when that divergence spreads out, that causes lift up at the surface. So we're going to have a lot of motion going right up into that jet stream to fill that spot. So let's get right into it here. This is going to go towards Tuesday, and this is a Tuesday afternoon. You can see this thing ejects right out into the plains. Really strong jet streak right there across Nebraska and Iowa, and the severe weather is going to be just to the east of that jet streak, and the snowstorm is going to be right where you see that circulating air up in the low. So we got a pretty dynamic system. Looks very similar to last week's, although the blizzard's going to be a lot more powerful for the Dakotas. As we head towards Wednesday, this thing scoots off to the east. This is Thursday at 3 a.m., so right when the event ends. You can see that jet streak now moving up into Canada. This is going to bring in a lot of precipitation and storms for the Midwest. And before we begin, if you enjoy educational weather forecast breakdowns, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and also click those bell notifications, as this is time-sensitive content. All right, guys and gals, it is time for the good stuff. We have the play-by-play breakdown of the storm as it tracks across the United States. We're going to look at the national view first, then we're going to go by region and look at the tornado and snow threat and hail as well. So this is around Tuesday morning. You can see this low pressure system starting to wind up out in northeast Colorado. Got a batch of snow already developing, but you'll see this area, nothing really going on. But by the time Tuesday afternoon comes, I think this area is going to light up like a Christmas tree. So definitely want to keep your eyes to the TV, have that weather radio ready. So as we head towards Tuesday afternoon, this is really when things are going to get going here. You can see that low pressure system sneaks its way out into southwest Iowa, and these isobars, the pressure lines, really starting to contract. And when you get that, that means there's a huge pressure difference, lots of temperature change in the atmosphere. That's going to create all sorts of wind and fronts for these storms to work with here. And you can see these kinks in the isobars. So this little kinked area, that's the area you want to watch, because that's the area I think that's going to really light up later in the day on Tuesday here. You can see farther to the north, the Dakotas, Minnesota, and parts of Wisconsin. Big time heavy snow, blizzard conditions with those tightly packed isobars, and also some sleet as well. Ice-wise, this probably won't be as big of an event, but definitely some ice and sleet within the parts of eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, and even northern Wisconsin. You can see Tuesday afternoon around 5 p.m. here, storms already developing in eastern Iowa and Illinois. This area, in my view, seems to be the biggest in terms of the tornado threat, and it'll be earlier on. But I do think another area is going to develop along a trough down there in parts of Arkansas, Missouri, maybe even Tennessee, up into southern Illinois, and then a double whammy, another wave of thunderstorms developing along that front when it moves to the east. So let's fast forward this now as we head towards Tuesday afternoon into the evening. So this is around 11 p.m. and you can see some scattered storms up in Arkansas, in parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri. That's going to be the highest tornado threat, those isolated storms that develop early, and we'll look at that here in a second. And you can see Wednesday morning, this kink right here, this is that front, and those blue and red lines, those are the expansion and contraction in the atmosphere's columns, and that's essentially measuring your temperatures, and you can see that strong gradient. So there's going to be a big time temperature change, as you're about to see here in a second. But watch as we head towards Wednesday night, that front lights up, boom, right there, string of pearls, maybe a squall line is more accurate, right there along the eastern plains, and you're going to get a double whammy within this area. Meanwhile, to the north, this storm really starts to weaken on that eastern side. You might get another wave of warm air convection and snow up in southeastern Canada. And then as we head towards Wednesday, this thing really starts to spread out. It might look worse, but it's actually weakening. This low pressure system is detaching from these fronts over here. A little bit of leftover snow and a little bit of leftover snow over here, but that split in the middle usually means the storm is starting to weaken. And you got this nice line of thunderstorms for the eastern plains, more so into the Tennessee Valley and even northeastern United States. So as we head towards Wednesday afternoon, there could be another severe weather threat, leftover storms, squall line type of mode, with mostly gusty winds, some hail, but also some tornadoes as well, potentially. There actually is a decent environment for tornadoes. So let's go region by region. But first, actually, let's look at this real quick. This is actually pretty sweet. You got this cold front around Tuesday around 10 p.m. So if you're in Kansas City here, maybe on a really late night barbecue or something, it's in the 70s, maybe even 80s, just south of there. By the time 2 hours afterwards, temperatures go way down. We're talking 40s, 50s. So big time temperature change, maybe even like single digits up there. So really, really cold. So big time temperature contrast with this system. Now you might be wondering, why am I in this blue uniform? Well, we've got something big planned for this channel over the next couple of months, and I'm going to be releasing something new every video. So stay tuned. We're going to be releasing some sweet stuff, brand new graphics, and a lot more. So let's look at this thing region by region, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So as we head towards Tuesday afternoon, you can see that moisture screaming to the north out of the Gulf of Mexico, 60s, even little pockets of 70s dews. There's going to be a surface trough that I think develops here, and that first wave of storms is going to have the highest tornado potential. You're going to see a second wave develop along the front. That'll be more of a wind threat with isolated tornadoes as well. But that first wave for this area down here, and then also southeast, east Iowa, and parts of central and northern Illinois, that's where it's going to be the strongest. As we head towards Wednesday here, you can see this front moves way to the east, but there's going to be some severe storms that could develop in the Tennessee Valley up in the Midwest as well. All right, so we're going to take a look at the radar now. We've got storms developing right around Tuesday, around 3 or 4 p.m. That's when stuff's really going to ramp up in northeast Missouri. That's going to track into Iowa, expand, and then also go into Illinois later in the day. Then you're going to see a second wave develop down south. And again, large hail damaging winds and potentially some tornadoes with these systems, particularly the ones that are isolated and on the southern end, just like that. You can see that little hook there, another one up there. So the isolated ones, you're going to want to watch out for those in particular, but definitely have those weather radios charged and ready to go. Later in the day, I do think you're going to see another wave of isolated storms develop. Boom, right there. Boom, southeast Missouri, parts of southern Illinois into Tennessee and Arkansas as well. These isolated ones that develop earlier on, and I think this might actually happen a little bit earlier than 11 o'clock, like the model's showing, depending on the cap there. If those things go off early in the day, especially around or just before sunset, there could be a significant tornado potential with these isolated storms in this region. And then you'll see, as we head towards the evening here, that cold front actually comes through. And then we really get a lot of storms to develop in parts of, even parts of Oklahoma, but mostly Missouri and Arkansas. Some isolated tornadoes possible in there, but that's really going to be a wind threat. But definitely you can see those isolated storms and even some capping. So there is going to be a couple of isolated tornadoes potentially along that front. So definitely keep your eyes peeled to the TV. And as we head towards Wednesday, is a little bit more clustered on Wednesday. But there'll be some new storms that develop and track their way to the east as well. And here's that significant tornado parameter I was talking about. This goes from 1 to 10. And you can see this is almost off the scale for eastern Iowa into Illinois. And those little holes are storms developing into that, expanding into that crazy tornado environment. So really something you want to keep your eye on up there. Maybe some strong tornadoes, potentially long track tornadoes. The SPC has a moderate risk for those out in those areas. One little area up here we want to watch here, and the NAM's a lot farther south with this, is potentially a secondary threat for western Iowa. And we'll have to watch that. Right now it looks capped, and the front is kind of really skinny. That moisture is really skinny. So we'll have to watch that if it does occur. There could be another supercell that tracks in western Iowa. I would say the threat's a lot lower, but something we definitely want to watch as these things, all it takes is one storm with one powerful tornado. So as you can see, Wednesday evening, this actually looks like a very impressive tornado environment. This really starts to ramp up for parts of Missouri. It's going to include Arkansas, most of Arkansas, all the way up to Illinois. So that low-level jet screaming to the north over leftover instability throughout the day. So the tornado threat is going to be potentially an overnight threat as you move to the east here. But one good thing is the instability will die out. So as these things move to the east towards Indiana, the threat's going to be a little bit lower. But let's look at that cap that I was talking about. It's pretty darn strong for parts of Iowa. You can see what I'm talking about right there along that front. So if that breaks, and if we get enough moisture back to the east, there could be a supercell in western Iowa. But you can see uncapped right here. And these white areas, the colored areas, are capped, nuclear cap. Wednesday morning, you can see that cap starts to reform. And as it does that, storms are going to form above the cap. So that's going to be moving them upwards. And when that happens, the tornadoes, it's very hard to get that tornado circulation because it's so much farther up in the atmosphere. So this is good news when this starts filling in. But you can see lots of areas still uncapped. So this could be an after dark tornado threat for parts of the eastern plains. And now we're going to take a look at that snowstorm out in the northern plains. And we got a real flesh on the deck here. We got severe storms, sleet, snow, wind, the whole package with this system. So this is Tuesday afternoon around 5 p.m. That low pressure system just to the north, that's where that snow is going to be, north of that warm front quite a ways. Sleet out here in Minnesota, big time snow event. And those tightly packed isobars, it's going to be howling, blinding snow for parts of North Dakota and South Dakota, upwards of a foot, maybe even up 15 inches in some areas, 20 inches. And as we head towards Wednesday evening, you can see this moves to the north and starts to weaken as we head towards Wednesday as that storm stretches out. One thing you'll note here is these thunderstorms developing on that southern side in Wisconsin. As those things move to the north, they might intersect that cold air mass and give you some thunder sleet. So be on the lookout for some thunder sleet, maybe even a rumble of thunder in that snow in parts of Wisconsin. Going to be a little more isolated in nature, but something kind of cool to see. We'll see if that happens. And again, that low pressure system spreading out. And as that happens, that heavy snow gets spread out and starts to weaken overall. But long duration, just light snow left over Wednesday night for the Dakotas. Heaviest snow is going to be in southern Canada and parts of Minnesota. And as we get towards the day on Wednesday, that really starts to weaken out. A little bit of re-strengthening on that northwest side of that low pressure tract just to the north. But for the most part, light snow left over for that region. We got snowfall amounts potentially upwards a foot to as much as 18, 19, 20 inches right through the heart of the Dakotas there. The issue for Minnesota and Wisconsin is going to be a lot of sleet. So generally on the northern end to maybe 3 to 6 inches. Again, some of those areas that get that thunder snow, thunder sleet could see a little bit more, potentially like that right there, 6 to 8 inches. But that main threat going to be in the Dakotas, western Wyoming, and northern parts of Minnesota. The latest HRR models are moving that a little bit further south, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Now, I wanted to show you guys something really crazy here with this storm. As we head towards Tuesday here, this is the low-level jet. This is winds just off the deck. But as we head towards Tuesday afternoon, look at this thing scoot out with this low pressure system. We have got a screaming low-level jet coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Winds 60, 70 miles an hour just off that deck. They're not, so it actually might be more like 80 miles an hour just off the deck. Really crazy winds here. That's going to fuel those storms, really get a big time storm event going Tuesday and Wednesday up there. Gusty winds, large hail, damaging winds, big time front there. And on that back side as well, you can see this is wrapping all the way around to the back side. We'll take a look at those winds on the surface, and this is surface winds. You can see that low pressure system, that hole right there. Big time winds here, 30, 36 miles an hour in the Dakotas, 40, 50 mile an hour gusts up in Minnesota. So that's going to be plenty enough to blow that snow around As you head towards Wednesday morning, that's when things really are going to ramp up in the Dakotas and northern Nebraska and those sand hills. Big time winds, 30, 45 miles an hour. Big time winds out here near the Great Lakes, 50, looks like a 58-mile-an-hour reading there. So this thing is going to really pack a punch with those winds as this moves to the northeast. And then as we head towards Wednesday afternoon and evening, gusty winds behind that cold front, gusts up to 30, 40 miles an hour for parts of the eastern plains. Alrighty, well, that was quite the forecast. We've got a lot of stuff going on, and we've got a lot of stuff planned for the channel. Now, you're probably wondering where I've been over the past 2 years. Well, some of this has been developing custom graphics and weather models for the channel. So you'll want to stay tuned. These are going to be a lot easier to read, and these are going to help prepare you for these big events that come and sweep across the nation from West Coast to East Coast. We're going to even include Canada in these, and we're going to occasionally go across the world as well. So stay tuned for that. And you're also going to learn how these crazy forces of the atmosphere work, how this expansion and contraction, the jet stream, the heat and the cold, how they explode, merge together, create all these spinning things in the atmosphere. We're going to break this all down. You're going to see behind the scenes, behind what a storm chaser or a meteorologist would look at. Now, at the moment, we're going to stick to forecasts, but potentially in the future, we'll do some live streams as well. Right now, there's some great YouTubers that do these live streams, the TV stations. So be sure to stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed this video. Stay safe if you're in those areas. Have that weather radio handy in case the power goes out. You never know. Have those phones charged. If you like this, share this with a friend. Smash that thumbs up button. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.